This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Well, folks, we are back. It's another Monday, another day in paradise. That is one of the dorkiest phrases I've ever heard. That's the term all the boomers use. At least the complacent ones that work desk jobs. I'm teasing. Don't get hot. I respect the boomer generation, even though they virtually screwed up society for the next 2 generations. But today we are here to talk about some good old classic pro wrestling. As we often like to do here on the channel, we are going to break down the second WWF In Your House pay-per-view, as well as touch up on the following night's Raw. We've also got another stellar round in the world of NXT to talk about. Just all kinds of glorious stuff to get into. As always, make sure you subscribe if you have not done so already. Check us out on YouTube and Rumble every Monday and Friday for new content and new material. I always appreciate the support from the returning viewers. We're a small little wrestling channel in the pantheon of big wrestling platformers. But I'm not looking to do this for money. I'm just a longtime nerd that's watched wrestling since I was a child. I still love it. Even though modern wrestling still bothers the hell out of me. But occasionally I stumble across some good stuff. And my interest gets piqued. And of course the classic stuff is always fun because it gives me perspective. Going back and remembering what I once saw as a kid and seeing if my adult brain still handles it well. In the case of WWF, not so much. But that's a good segue into WWF In Your House, because boy, this show certainly was a doozy. By the way, have I ever mentioned how much it sucks trying to navigate Peacock to find these fucking pay-per-views? There's like no system. Everything is organized by season. Like, I forget where they have all the pay-per-views categorized, but it doesn't actually say the abbreviation pay-per-view. It's like something stupid. In-ring specials or whatever. Like I'm ordering a fucking pizza from catering. I'll take the in-ring special. All toppings included. So I mentioned during the Raw recap the other week, I probably was not going to spend a half hour trying to dissect this event. To be honest, outside the IC and WWF title match, there really wasn't much going on here. There were a couple of dark matches that I ran down in the preview, and me completely forgetting they were dark matches. I think I read something about an Undertaker casket match, and then I'm like, wait, that match didn't happen on the show. Because I think that match is scheduled for SummerSlam in a month. Like I said in the Go Home review, 80% of this thing looked like middle-of-the-card TV matches. I still don't even really know how half these matches got booked. The entire selling point for the event was, Jeff Jarrett is going to sing a concert. Buy a ticket. Because if there's one thing WWF fans were really craving in 1995, it was Jeff Jarrett vocals. Give me a break. And you know the sad thing, that angle was still probably better than 99% of the show. It was certainly the most noteworthy. So the opener is the 1-2-3 Kid versus Road Dogg. Two future DX comrades going toe-to-toe here. And, well, basically, they had a theme-running story going on throughout this match, oddly enough. While Roadie's out there having this match, they eventually cut to a shot in what I presume to be Double J's bathroom. He's walking around not paying attention to the monitor, trying to warm up for his big performance later. And of course, the immediate smart fan of me talking here, I'm asking two questions up front. Number one, why does Double J have a TV monitor in his bathroom? And two, why is there a cameraman filming Jeff Jarrett walking around in his private bathroom? Now, you see, these are the kinds of things running through my mind. Even though the story they're trying to tell is that Jarrett's completely ambivalent to everything happening with the Roadie because, well, there's obviously issues going on between them. Aside from that, this was a reasonably okay TV match that they made people pay $20 to watch. I have no idea how the Kid managed to give Roadie a springboard spin heel kick out to the floor without shattering his ankle. That was really the only move I wrote down here where I was like, holy shit. That was actually impressive. But again, the whole thing is mostly background noise for all the split screens they were doing with Jarrett. It was weird, though, because I mean, technically, Roadie is still a heel by this point. They're teasing the dissension with him and Jarrett, but nothing's been blown off yet. Meanwhile, as they try to make us have sympathy for the fact that Roadie's getting blown off by his friend here, he's still the heel going up against the 1-2-3 Kid. So that was a bit out of sorts. Eventually, Roadie accidentally posts himself. The Kid tries to go up top, but as he gets ready to come off, the Roadie trips his ankle up. And then Road Dogg gives the Kid a middle rope stuff pile driver for the 3 count. That was the other big move I noted here. I was not expecting a middle rope pile driver from the Road Dogg. But hey, if you're going to give someone a clear-cut finish, doesn't get any more clear-cut than that. So the finish was at least good. Beyond that, more just a way to extend the Roadie-Jarrett split for whenever that happens. And that was followed with a pair of backstage pre-tapes that I mostly fast-forwarded through. One of them was the $1 Million Corporation being all wacky and outlandish. The other was Diesel and Shawn looking like the biggest tools on the planet, wearing these In Your House 2 t-shirts. Shameless sponsor plugs. And far be it for me to insinuate someone's well-being, but I was watching Shawn and Diesel here. They may have been intoxicated and or stoned out of their fucking gore. No, I'm not trying to imply anything. I'm just going to pull a Jesse Ventura and say, I'm just asking questions. Speaking of asking questions, why are Mabel and Mo wrestling Savio Vega and Razor Ramon? Actually, a better question would be, why am I paying to watch Mabel and Mo wrestle Savio Vega and Razor Ramon? Both completely valid. Here's pretty much everything to confirm after watching this go down. Savio Vega, babyface in peril, epic failure. They could have saved this man from a burning building and the people still would have sat on their hands. Excruciatingly boring match. God, watching Mo and Mabel beat on Savio for 15 minutes is probably equivalent to the level of excitement watching paint dry. I mean, the only thing that people gave a shit about in this match was Razor. So, of course, they beat him. Genius move. Somebody needs to explain the Savio Vega push of 1995. I had completely forgotten about it. But since King of the Ring in May, they have done nothing but protect this guy at all costs. Savio Vega. I mean, no offense to the guy, but Savio Vega? I don't get it. But yeah, match sucked. Razor made a short little comeback in the last few minutes that got the people a little more engaged. And then Mabel cut him off in the corner, hit him with a big belly-to-belly for the 3 count. I mean, yeah, obviously Mabel needed to go over here for what they're setting up next month at SummerSlam. This is just a prime example of how Vince had no clue when it came to listening to his audience. These people are tearing down the walls for Razor Ramon, going batshit for everything he does. So, of course, Vince logic, let's push Mabel, pal. Look at him. He's huge. It is still less baffling than the push of Savio Vega, but both are still idiotic. What wasn't idiotic, however, was this epically bad segment with Todd Pettingill and the band. Gearing up for that big Double J live concert. This is the kind of segment where everybody all loses faith in humanity. So Todd's hanging out with all the musicians and acting very Caucasian. There's no other way to phrase it. He was the quintessential uncool, cringe white guy that had no rhythm or musical taste, and everybody knew it. And so he's trying to engage with everybody. The backup female singers are trying so hard not to openly call this man a creep in front of everybody. This is an actual quote from Todd here. Look at all the equipment you guys have. Uh-huh. That right there. That is when you know you are dealing with an amateur. So then Todd goes up to the drummer and starts doing terrible impressions. The drummer does a horrible call and response. It's like when dad comes in the room and tries to get his 8-year-old son to play fills when he's never taken private instruction before. It just sounds like death on the ears. But this all did have a fitting payoff. As Todd goes up to the guitarist, Big Al. Todd's all excited. His blood's pumping. He goes, Big Al, are you ready for this? And Big Al, deadpan, with as little emotion as humanly possible, simply responds with, I'm ready. Died. This was a man that was fed up with Todd's bullshit. So that was all at least good comic relief. It was better than Doc Hendricks meeting with all the geek babyface lumberjacks in the locker room. This was just dumb and unfunny comedy. But then we come to the grand performance. It is time for Double J to sing his big hit single, With My Baby Tonight. Live and in living color. The totally transparent, authentic, not completely farcical live performance by Double J. Well, we know Jarrett is not a lip syncer. Sorry to break the news. This here was... well, I would say it was everything they chalked it up to be. It was a concert performance of some description. I don't actually think they used any of the original musicians they had for the music video, which is odd. Big Al, I think, came out of his shell a little bit here, which is good to see. I'm not going to do a Schenkerian analysis of the tune. It was pretty much the exact album cover of the song. They did everything in their power to mask Jarrett's totally obvious bad lip syncing, which was the whole point. I mean, everybody knew what it was all eventually leading to. I think I was mainly shocked that they didn't use this as Jarrett's actual ring intro, because that's what I thought it was going to be. It was just going to lead directly into his match with Shawn. But no, they still put the Bam Bam Henry Godwin match in between this. I don't know why. It was Bam Bam and the Hog Farmer having a total throwaway match for 5 minutes and nobody cared about. But hey, they're paying for the pay-per-view time. They got to fill 2 hours somehow. Wouldn't want to peak too soon. And obviously I've talked about the Roadie Jarrett thing. You know, both of these guys are about to leave the company right after the pay-per-view aired. And I don't think either of them come back until December. So they basically had to put the whole feud on ice for another 5 months after this. Talk about bad timing. But hey, at least Jarrett gave us a good outing before his departure. Doing business the right way. Dropping the strap to Shawn on his way out the door. The Intercontinental title match with HBK and Double J. They had a very good pay-per-view caliber match here. Considering the circumstances, Jarrett was a total pro. I mean, he could have easily gone out there and phoned it in on his last night. But he went out there with Shawn and, man, they gave the people a wrestling clinic here for 20 minutes. That magic Vince word, a seesaw matchup. And it was very much so. There was a lot of ebb and flow here. A lot of great drama with Shawn getting the big flurries of offense going, only to get cut off by the Roadie behind the ref's back. I mean, the commentary, I try to tune it out as much as possible because I knew if I paid close attention to it, I might get pissed off. I did turn my head a little bit when Vince started bringing up the topic of Shawn Michaels singing. He's like, "Can you imagine Shawn Michaels singing?" To which I asked, did Vince completely forget about his own fucking theme song? Apparently so. I mean, watching Shawn take an elevated backdrop out to the floor was wincing. All that talk about how the casket bump was the thing that screwed up his back. I think it's more likely he fucked himself up taking a backdrop onto a thin layering of mat over concrete. But that's just me. So Jarrett worked that over for a while. Again, a lot of blatant interference from the Roadie in this match. They broke out a good sequence of near falls to keep the people on their feet. I will say one thing. This is something that's always bothered me about Jeff Jarrett matches. He's like one of the only guys I ever see do this. his kickouts always bother the crap out of me. He does that thing where he'll lift one arm straight up in the air, but like none of the rest of his body ever leaves the mat. Apparently it counts as a kickout when you stiffen your arm and lift it straight into the air, regardless of whether or not your shoulder actually leaves the mat. He's like the only guy I ever see do that. And I always hated how he got away with it. Because it makes no sense. His entire body is stiff as a board, but he gets his arm like a quarter of an inch off the mat. And apparently that counts as a kick out. Must be a Memphis thing. In any case, there was a ref bump toward the end, which didn't really play much into the finish, although it led to more Road Dogg interference. They do the deal where Jarrett and Shawn do the do-si-do Irish whip into the ropes. And then Roadie, of course, has his back turned when he thinks he's about to trip up Shawn. Turns out it was Jarrett that he tripped. So Shawn capitalizes. He hits the sweet chin music on Jarrett and seals the deal. And Roadie sold it great, too. Like, as soon as you realize he fucked Jarrett over, he's trying to scurry up to the apron to distract the official and do anything to get his attention. But Hedner counts to 3 anyway. And, well, that pretty much cemented the breakup. Again, it's a shame they had to put the whole thing on the back burner until December. But they did the right thing by getting the belt off of Jarrett here. I don't know if Shawn was always the immediate plan, but it's a safe bet, considering what they're about to lead into for SummerSlam. But like I said, excellent match. Coming from a very heavy critic of both Jarrett and Michaels, respectively, over the years, I can point out their good moments too. And they pieced together a really enjoyable match here. But I always talk about it when we go back in the timeline and review WWF matches in 95. It sucks that these kinds of matches were rarities. And the problem was that even when they did give us bright spots like this, they would immediately ruin it by following it with a bad match or a terrible skit. You know, in this case, it was Doc Hendricks in the locker room being loud and annoying. I don't even know what the fuck he was screaming about. Something about Jarrett and Roadie getting into a shoving match. All I wrote down here was, loud noises! Because that's all I heard. And that took us to Owen and Yoko against the Allied Powers for the WWF Tag Titles. A feud that I had completely forgotten about. And how sad. It was one of Luger's last major WWF appearances before he walked out of the company. I just thought it was funny how, during a match that featured the American-British Alliance, they chose this point in the pay-per-view to acknowledge the Spanish announce team. Impeccable timing. So here we are, 2 years after Luger and Yokozuna headlined SummerSlam 93 for the WWF title. Vince is still out there talking about the body slam heard around the nation. Now here we are 2 years later in Nashville. The same two guys standing across the ring from each other. Yoko's about 300 pounds fatter, and Luger's never been any less relevant. How far the mighty have fallen. So, during this match, for no discernible reason I could think of, they do a spot where Yoko stumbles back into the corner and accidentally lands on Owen's foot. And that directly leads to a shoving match between the two, where JC's trying to get cooler heads to prevail. After we literally just saw the breakup of another heel team on the same show, now they're doing the same exact thing with Yokozuna and Owen. And it led to, well, nothing, in fact. They just shook hands and continued like nothing ever happened. I mean, aside from that, the wrestling was fine. There were some decent moments throughout the match. I mean, Davey Boy and Owens' work together was fantastic. Although Davey did nearly kill Owen with a back body drop attempt. Owen only went like halfway over before he realized he wasn't going to fully rotate. So he had to basically twist and then come down on his shoulder to prevent landing on his neck. God, that looked ugly. I think I sharted myself when I saw that. But it ends up breaking down. Luger and Bulldog kind of give Yokozuna a double back suplex. Kind of like how Luger body slammed Yokozuna on more than one occasion, but not really. And, well, after Owen breaks up a pin attempt on Luger, he knocks Bulldog out of the ring, and then Yoko just stands up. He drops a leg over Luger's head, and he pins him. The level of dweeb that Luger has reached by this point is unprecedented. He's just... I mean, it's so hard not to feel bad for the guy. It really is. Like, at this point, it's deliberate career sabotage. There's no other way to view it. The idea that Luger gets hit with one leg drop of doom, that's all she wrote. Come on. There's no other way to see that. Vince knew exactly what he was doing. And this is one of the last times we see Bulldog and Luger as a team. Which is ironic when you consider they were teasing a breakup with Owen and Yoko like 5 seconds earlier. Only to then realize it's Luger and Davey Boy who actually end up breaking up. But there you have it. Here in Nashville, Tennessee. Home of the proud Rail Americans. Well, of course, they beat the American guy to the kayfabe Japanese talent, even though he's actually Samoan. I mean, at this point, all you can do is shake your head and move on. WWF booking in 1995, people. What more do you want? But that took us to our grand finale here. The main event. It's a lumberjack match for the WWF Championship. Psycho Sid squaring up with Diesel. This is, it's actually round 2 in their series. They already wrestled one clunker at the first In Your House back in May. So, well, as the old saying goes, it was so nice, we had to do it twice. Even though nobody was asking for it. And it wasn't nice at all. In fact, their first match was horrible. This was at least mildly entertaining because of the stupidity. Mostly thanks to the Lumberjacks. I still can't believe this fucking feud has gone on for as long as it has. Like, they were showing clips dating all the way back to the night after WrestleMania. Right when Sid turned on Shawn and powerbombed him. That was in like early April when all that went down. We are coming up on August. Good God. All so we could get to this point. Diesel and Sid for the WWF title. Given time. What a payoff. Like I said, though, the Lumberjacks totally made this worthwhile. I loved how completely biased the heel Lumberjacks were in favor of Sid. Like, whenever he got dumped out, all the heels were patting him on the back and going, No, take your time, Sid. No rush. You got this. they're like surrounding him like a brick wall, preventing all the baby faces from getting anywhere close to him. It was so perfectly shady. And of course, all the lumberjacks eventually come to blows anyway. At one point, they were all fighting on the floor while Diesel was down selling. I'm like, can we please stop trampling the champion here? Let's have some common sense, people. I mean, that was all at least more interesting to watch than Sid and Diesel doing slow, lumbering big guy offense for 10 minutes. I guess the other big story here was Mabel and Mo getting involved and going after Diesel. They yanked him out to the floor and then spent a minute or two beating him down. You know, obviously trying to set that feud in motion for next month. They end up building to a spot where Sid gets a near fall on Diesel after powerbombing him. And then for reasons that I really can't explain, Sid decides to go after all the babyface lumberjacks. Not even really targeting anybody specifically. He just saw good guys standing out on the floor and went, fuck these guys. So he went out and started beating them up. Which then led to Shawn coming off the top and giving Sid an axe handle to the back. Right in front of the ref, I might add. Which I guess would bring up a perfectly valid question when it comes to the rules of lumberjack matches. What actually constitutes a DQ in these kinds of matches? Are they all just secretly no DQ all the time? Is that an unwritten rule? Because then we had all the corporation members interfering right as Diesel's making his comeback. I don't know why that was all permitted. They're supposed to be enforcing the rules outside the ring, not just getting involved on a whim. But Earl Hebner was perfectly okay with it. He just let it happen. So, well, then Diesel hit Sid with a big boot, and he pinned him. A big boot to the face. I would call it a flat finish, but I can't even say that, because the people popped for it. That was it. Diesel knocked out Sid Vicious with a big boot and pinned him. He rendered him unconscious for 3 seconds. Meanwhile, in 2024, we're lucky if a guy stays down for more than 2 seconds after taking a Canadian destroyer through flaming tables. The fuck? But that basically puts this feud to rest. Thank God. Now we can move on to bigger and better things. Well, certainly bigger things. I'm not going to say better. In the form of Diesel and Mabel. Hot dog. I mean, I told you I wasn't going to spend 45 minutes talking about the show. I'm surprised I've gone as long as I did. I envision these In Your House reviews are going to get shorter and shorter as we progress. Especially if we're getting more cards like this. I mean, there's one match on the show worth checking out, but beyond that, it's a very missable event. And we didn't even get a Dream Home sweepstakes this go-around. I wanted to hear how that family was doing in Orlando that won the beach home last month. That shit was awesome. Not this month. Because Nashville didn't have any great dream homes available. But we are now going to transition over to the following night's Raw. Staying on the topic of WWF and the slow build to SummerSlam. And boy, what a spin the face to Jim Cornette this was. Straight out of the Vince playbook. We're in Louisville, Kentucky for this biatch. It's the Raw after the pay-per-view. So naturally, guess who they fed to Shawn Michaels in the opener this week? One of JC's heavenly bodies. Because of course, you knew it had to happen. By the way, I love the spelling. Jimmy Del Rey. Del Rey. One word. That was pretty great. You knew Corny was probably fuming over this one. He was probably motherfucking Sean under his breath the entire time. So, well, I believe this was non-title. Sean won the belt the night prior, so that was the big talking point from the announcers here. It was good wrestling for the most part. That's right. I've now given Sean 2 back-to-back compliments. Make sure you take note of that. It'll probably never happen again. I mostly spent the entire match trying to figure out what the hell was going on with Jimmy's tan line. Did he bake himself from the waist up and then completely forget about his legs? His legs were so white, and they almost looked translucent. What the hell was going on there? All kidding aside, it's sad when you see the bodies getting jerked around as underneath fodder for the WWF. They had that brief moment in the sun a couple years back when they were wrestling the Steiners. Since that point, it's all been downhill. Not that anyone expected Jimmy Del Rey to go over in this match. It was all basic stuff with Sean selling a little bit for Del Rey. He made his comeback. Got to hit both the bodies with his sweet chin music before getting the pin. It wasn't blowaway or anything, but they at least got Sean on TV to establish that he's the new IC champ. I would have liked it better that way if they didn't try to make him the actual world champion in 8 months. At least by this point, he was still unbearable prick Sean in the mid-card. And by early next year, he's unbearable prick Sean in the main event picture. And if you think I'm being irrational, the guy celebrated here by doing a striptease on live broadcast television. I think I'm justified in my criticism. You know what else I'm justified in? Completely forgetting that the Bret Hart-Hakushi feud is still a thing. 4 months. This thing has been in the work for 4 months. I don't know why. Other than to keep Bret busy, I guess. God, this entire 1995 run for Bret Hart is so bizarre. I mean, you talk about a guy spinning his wheels for the entirety of the year. Bret is a poster boy for that. One lame duck feud after another. Then, of course, right after WrestleMania 12, as he's finally starting to gain some traction again by re-entering the main event picture, well, then he's gone for another 6 to 8 months. Now, we'll get back to Bret in a while. Let's talk about the Smoking Guns tag squash with John Fuckner and Rick Schnitzelgruber. It sucked. As did the 2 job guys involved. Vince and Lawler spent the entire time mixing their names up. The only thing I got out of it was Bart Gunn's very high-pitched squeal right before they hit their finish. It was, disturbingly feminine sounding. There was one singular woman in the crowd that popped when the Guns won. Everybody else just farted in their general direction. Understandably so. The pistol whippers are not moving the needle here in the WWF. Shocker. And then we had our very first vignette for the upcoming debut of Goldust. Oh boy. Yeah, that's coming. I'm sure we'll have fun breaking those skits down. Now, we didn't actually see Dustin on camera here working the gimmick. We just saw the name flash up in bright, glittery gold letters, while Howard Finkel was also introducing him at 260 pounds, which is weird because we haven't actually seen him debut yet. So I'm not entirely sure how he would have gotten word on his weight. Then again, there was a lot of shit that I never understood about the Goldust character, as you will soon come to learn. I also didn't really understand their intent with this new street preacher gimmick for Fatu. Mostly because it never went anywhere and nobody ever remembers it. But he's still out there in the streets of the ghetto, telling the people to make a difference and believe in the power of positivity, I guess. Someone ought to send smoke signals to the New Day. See if they can give Fatu some pointers here. You need more trombone action. And unicorns shitting out rainbows. And cereal. Can't forget about the cereal. So then Waylon Mercy had a quick squash with Gary Scott. Beyond it being the obligatory sponsor infomercial for the announcers, I took great notice of all the people filing out of the room from opposite the hard cam. A lot of people took one look at Waylon Mercy here and said, now's probably a good time to hit the Jonathan. And or the concession stand. I mean, I could probably think of a few more interesting things than watching Waylon Mercy wrestle. Like standing in line waiting for a hot dog. That sounds like way more fun. Mercy went over with a sleeper hold in about 2 minutes. It was about as uneventful as you'd probably picture a Dan Spivey match to be. And then following up on more In Your House footage, they showed us a pre-tape of King Mabel calling out Diesel for SummerSlam. In very WWF-like delivery, he referred to him multiple times here as Big Daddy Fool. Also made several references to his royalty because, well, need I remind you all, Mabel is the King of the Ring, our Royal Highness. The only thing I got a kick out of here was hearing Mabel actually quote Mr. T. But, yeah, they're really going through with this. I don't even know how to process it, honestly. Like, I know the match happens. It's fucking awful from what I remember. But just watching this vignette with Mabel calling out Diesel, I don't know. Did anyone actually ever buy that Mabel was going to be the champion at any point? I didn't. I just saw a placeholder bad guy. They needed someone else for Diesel to feud with after the interminable feud with Ted DiBiase's posse. Figuring they wanted to throw Mabel some kind of bone for winning King of the Ring. And they're like, well, let's just get it out of the way and forget it happened. Which is essentially what they did. Okay, serious question here. Before we talk about Bret Hart versus Hakushi, are we not going to pretend it's a little creepy that Hakushi's been carrying around a severed Bret Hart head? I'm just pointing out the obvious. It's a little strange. So we did get a jump start on the floor here. This is where I was informed that WWF apparently has rules that involve steel guardrails. Apparently the talent gets fined if they use the guardrail to their advantage. Well, that's news to me. I never knew that was a thing. Pretty sure we've seen heels drop baby faces over the guardrail plenty of times. Nothing was ever said then. Maybe Vince just hated Hakushi. As did most of the audience. So I'll be honest. We've seen these guys wrestle before. I think they had a match at the first In Your House. I don't remember a fucking thing about it. I remember Brett won. That's about it. Looking back, it was probably the high point of that pay-per-view. It's crazy to think. It's only been 2 months, and I've completely blocked that thing from memory. Lawler was being insufferably annoying on commentary here. To the point where he was so anti-Brett, you could almost chalk it up to racism. But seriously, he just would not shut up throughout the whole thing. I mean, it's one thing to badger a guy you're feuding with, but Lawler always had a tendency to overdo it with the commentary. And here he just crossed that boundary. It was mute the fucking television level bad. So trying to block all that out. I mean, the action was good. Hakushi never really got over with the American audience as a heel, so the heat portion wasn't very exciting. I did like their pitch spot for the second commercial break. Brett's on the floor selling, and Hakushi's perched up on the top like he's about to do a big dive. But then he stops. Hakushi slowly gets down from the ring post. And then they just fade to commercial. I was like, wow, that was a popcorn fart spot. The hell? No, instead of diving onto my opponent, I'm going to slowly climb back down and wait. Let my fellow opponent get a chance to catch his breath. And then, of course, the moment they come back from break, Hakushi just gives Brett a standing moonsault press out to the floor anyway. Whatever. So Brett makes the comeback. Hakushi tried to go up top for a big diving headbutt, but missed. And then Brett gave him a superplex, blocked in the sharpshooter, and got the verbal submission. Much to Lawler's chagrin. And then, just for good measure, Brett also beat up Shinja and laid him out. And after apparently writing the closing paragraph to this book, now they are immediately switching gears by segueing into Brett's next feud with Jean-Pierre Lafitte. Why not? He came out at the very end and stole the severed Brett head. Because I guess he has a thing for mannequin heads. Should talk to Al Snow about that. Meanwhile, Brett is still entangled with the nonsense involving Lawler and Isaac Yankem. Did I mention how absurd Brett's run in 95 was? Holy Christ. Not quite as absurd as Dean Douglas, though. More gimmicks that I've completely wiped from memory and forgot about. How could I forget about poor Shane Douglas? WWF really needed some more wacky, crazy personas on television. They thought, you know what we're missing? A fake professor. That'll get a guy over. I want everybody to take a wild guess. Place your bets. Dean Douglas. Did it get over? Well, if it's any consolation, he's back working for ECW the following year. As a bitter, angry, pissed off bad guy that complains about everything. and made an entire career out of doing roid rage promos. So by all accounts, the answer is no. But Dean is here to lecture us about the definition of knowledge. Knowledge. The sum of what is known. The body of truth. Information and principles acquired by mankind. The fact or condition of knowing something with familiarity gained through experience or association. The acquaintance with or the understanding of art, science, or technique. By the way, what? The understanding of art, science, or technique? Wouldn't technique go hand in hand with both art and science? What about math? What about reading? What about writing? Where is Shane getting his dictionary information? I think he's been scammed. And Professor Dean Douglas also was here to let us know that he will be grading the WWF talent. That's right. He will be assigning them a letter grade based on performance. Because, well, he's a professor, you see. And that is what professors do. They grade term papers and do teacher things. Yeah. I'm not feeling this one. Gotta be honest. Kind of prefer the disgruntled, angry version of Shane Douglas more than anything. This was, dare I say, a tad stagey. Almost as if he really wasn't into the gimmick all that much. But hey, what do I know? Speculation, conjecture. Oh, and by the way, yes, that was the main event segment. A Dean Douglas vignette. That was how they decided to run off the remaining viewers at home. And they may have in fact succeeded. This is a tremendously blasé episode of Monday Night Raw. Can't even really call it bad. Because they at least had some decent wrestling for a change. But like, I mean, you have to bear in mind, SummerSlam is still supposed to be one of the big fours. And their idea to sell tickets in Pittsburgh for this fucking pay-per-view is by announcing Diesel versus Mabel for the WWF Championship. Actually, not even announcing it. Just teasing it. For the record, I've probably stated numerous times that I am a Pittsburgh native. I attended this event. I don't even recall if I still have the ticket or not. But I was there. Back at the good old Igloo when that structure was still around. The Mellon Arena. Actually, was it even called the Mellon Arena yet? They still might have been calling it the Civic Center. A very unique building. Lots of fond memories there. I did not have fond memories of this pay-per-view, however. I went with my brothers. It was... I think it was the first WWF pay-per-view I went to live. I'd seen a couple WCW house shows a few years prior, but, you know, in terms of, like, marquee big events, this was one of the more big attraction events I went to. I remember, even as a kid, I just left that building so drained. Because I hated that fucking main event. Oh, it was awful. And especially when the match prior was the ladder match with Shawn and Razor. You know, granted, the smart fan of me talking here, you know, realizing that there was literally no story reason for having that second ladder match to begin with. Aside from, they had one at WrestleMania 10 that stole the show, so let's do it again. Regardless, to think that match didn't main event an all-time SummerSlam classic, but Diesel versus Mabel for the WWF title, that was the lasting memory of SummerSlam 95 for me as a kid. And we'll be reliving that horror show in about a month's time. Oh, how I can't wait. All right, NXT. Sometimes these shows open with the most random things. Take this week as an example. When did Charlotte become the new NXT Women's Champion? That was back in May at TakeOver, correct? Okay, so she wins the belt. They've been doing this on and off thing on TV where the BFFs are going through this slow burn breakup. I mean, that whole thing seems like it's been going on for months. So 2.5 months later, now is the point where they decide to put together a little promo package to explain the backstory. That's sort of a modern thing we commonly see throughout taping blocks in wrestling now. They'll have, like, say 3 or 4 key feuds going on at a given time, but they'll only feature certain storylines in a particular episode. Maybe they'll only touch on 2 of them. The other 2 don't even get addressed. That's why you often see situations where the champions aren't even booked for a show. I.e. Adrian Neville last week. I don't even think he made a single appearance. So this is the week where they said, let's remind people of all the melodrama going on with the high school girls. That was a lovely 2 minutes. But I guess it's still a thing on the show. Whatever they're doing with this breakup with Mo, Larry, and Curly, a.k.a. Summer Rae, Sasha, and Charlotte. So which one's Curly? You know what else is still a thing happening on the show? Completely superfluous Ascension squashes. We are now at the point where they aren't even bothering to throw up a graphic for the job guys. Now they're just calling them local guys. So, yeah. The Ascension killed both local and guy. The longer it went and the more people chanted "Yah," the more I started thinking about how cool it would have been if they signed LA Knight to a contract to be their manager. Then you could have him come out every week and introduce the Ascension. Yeah. I've got nothing. It's the Ascension barreling over 2 indie guys in very Road Warrior-like fashion. Cool. We've seen it a million times. It's always fun watching them get over on smaller guys while the people go nuts for them. Even though I'm pretty sure Connor and Victor are technically supposed to be heels. But, like, what do you say at this point? I mean, I keep talking about it every time we do these reviews. They barely have a tag division as it is. They got some bodies. But most of them are mid-card geeks that really shouldn't stand a chance going up against these guys. I still don't remember who they end up dropping the belts to. And I know it's not FTR. Or whatever their names were in WWE. The Revival. Yeah, I know it's not them. Which is making me think it might end up being the vaudevillains. And that would just be stupid. But we'll see. Right now it's just more of the same when it comes to me talking about NXT's stale tag division in 2014. Nothing's really changed. And that brings us to Tyler Breeze versus Mojo Rawley. God help us all. The battle of my two most hated gimmicks in NXT at the moment. It's like they booked it on purpose, just to spite me. Well, thankfully, sanity prevailed here. It went about 30 seconds. Breeze feigned his finger injury for a sec. And then he hit Rawley with a beauty shot kick for the 3. It went about as perfectly as I could have booked it. I mean, I'd have just done the smart thing and not book it at all. But if they had to do it, if it was on the format, this is the right way to go. By the way, we did confirm Breeze's injury, hangnail. I knew it all along. So then they aired a commercial for Saturday night's main event. I guess they were in the process of uploading all the archive footage to the network at the time. Which got me thinking, maybe we should have considered reviewing those shows instead of NXT. But we're already too deep into the weeds now. We made a commitment, gosh darn it. And we're going to see it through to the end. Or at least as long as I can stomach this programming. They almost turned me off entirely for having to sit through Charlotte versus Summer Rae for the Divas belt. And I'm just going to open the floor for discussion here and ask all of the WWE marks, please answer one question for me. Has there ever been anybody less intimidating than Summer Rae? I'm not even going to elaborate on that. Go watch a Summer Rae match. Watch her movements. Watch her mannerisms. Tell me you've never seen anybody less coordinated and or threatening. Just watching her trash talk is laughable. So these two had a very poor match. At one particular point, Byron Saxton was trying to pull out his journalism cap. Journalisming all over the place with this dynamically dumb question. I really want to know what happened when it came to the breakup of the BFFs. How uncool can one man possibly get? A grown fucking dude asked that question. Unreal. Oh, and to answer your question, Byron, they're women. Of course their friendship was going to disintegrate. So on top of Summer's egregious wrestling, she also has the most annoying raspy voice. All throughout the match, she kept screaming shit like, "I made you, Charlotte! I made you!" And it was just ear-piercing enough to bother a deaf mute. The crowd actually broke out a boring chant here during Summer's heat. Ironically. And that was the point where she kept putting Charlotte in all these fake submissions, including a single leg bar where she wasn't even bending any particular part of the knee. She just wrapped her arms around her leg and kneeled there for a minute. The fans also started doing the wave just to amuse themselves. Of course, the announcers had to pretend like everything was normal and it wasn't happening. And the match kept going. And 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 going 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 and going. And then finally, Charlotte just hit Summer with natural selection and beat her flat. Probably called a mid-match audible and said, "We're taking it home, sister." These fans are about 1 minute away from setting the seats on fire. So yeah, match sucked. I have no clue what brain trust agent in the back thought giving Charlotte and Summer Rae 12 minutes was a good idea. Whoever it was, I hope they were immediately terminated. Hopefully that puts all the Summer Rae crap to bed so we can move on and forget about it. I'm so done with her god-awful matches, dude. I really am. She's awful. Where the fuck is Bayley at? Oh, that's right. Yeah, they're still jobbing her out to all the green rookies. How silly of me. Forgetting this was WWE back in the mid-2010s. So, of course, they were burying all the good talent. But hey, at least we got Alexa Bliss. Because that's what we need in substitution of hot, flexible blonde chicks with 2 left feet in the ring. It's more hot, flexible blonde chicks with 2 left feet in the ring. Vince McMahon, everybody. What more do you need to say? So then we had the Vaudevillains going up against Sin Cara and Kalisto. During the ring intros, the announcers were talking about how there was a lot of mystery circulating around who Kalisto's partner would be for this tag match. You mean the tag match that wasn't advertised and we had no idea was happening until the minute these guys came out? Sure. We'll go with that theory. I just like the fact that Kalisto needed to find himself a partner to team with. So he naturally went around the locker room in search of another masked luchador. Inclination. It's an okay little tag match. Renee marking out for Simon Gotch the entire time was kind of funny. And like at one point, the male announcers are trying to talk strategy of how Sin Cara can wheel himself back into a comeback and tag Kalisto in to save the day. And Renee just casually chimes in with, "Nice mustache." Like right as they put the camera on Gotch. She was technically dating Moxley at this point, correct? Or were they just in the talking stages? Well, I'll tell you what. If things didn't work out with the oil mechanic, we could have potentially saw Renee Gotch, which actually would have been a pretty cool name. So the Vaudevilles get their heat on Sin Cara. Kalisto makes the big fiery comeback. Sin Cara takes out Aiden English on the floor with a big dive. And then Kalisto puts away Gotch with whatever he used to call that reverse DDT into a sit-out backdrop. Kind of defied the laws of physics if you really think about it, but it looked cool. And again, this was before they started calling them the Lucha Dragons. At this point, they were just 2 generic masked Mexicans put together in a tag team. I guess if you're a smarter fan watching, you can call out the BS of a makeshift tag team beating an already established team in their first match together. But I'm okay with it because, you know, at least they went somewhere with Kalisto and Sin Cara. It wasn't like a Jason Jordan, Ty Dillinger thing where they put them together, broke them up off camera, and that was pretty much the end of it. So this is fine. And then we had a surprisingly fun main event. I don't think they advertised this a week in advance, so it was kind of surprising when I saw the graphic pop up for it. Adrian Neville in a non-title match with Rusev. Still accompanied by his hot, flexible wife. a.k.a. the ravishing Russian Lana. God, she was awesome. I miss Lana, man. She was fucking great. Standing up there at the top of the ramp talking about how Russia has the real heroes in the world, unlike America. Burying the president, putting over how awesome Vladimir Putin is. Then they flash his pickup on screen to get heat. It was actually really good stuff. I wish I'd have gone further with pushing everyone's buttons. I mean, it's so culturally relevant today. God, can you imagine if Rusev came along like 10 years after this? He'd have been the biggest heel in wrestling. And they did so much right with Rusev for his first year. And they fucked it up when they put him in the ring with Big Match John. And the rest is history. If you were a promising young star and you got positioned to work with John Cena, you knew it was game over for your career. Ask Zack Ryder. Ask Alex Riley. Ask R-Truth. Ask Cesaro. Ask Bray Wyatt. Ask Ryback. Ask Damian Sandow. Ask the entire fucking Nexus. I'm probably forgetting numerous others. Y'all wonder why I hated WWE for most of the late 2000s and the majority of the 2010s? Y'all can blame Super Cena for that bullshit. And the garbage booking, but that goes without saying. But this is a good old school big guy, little guy match. Rusev overpowered Neville for the majority of it. They let Neville get in some hope spots toward the end to make his comeback. And right as Neville was about to put away Rusev with a red arrow, Tyler Breeze hits the ring and crotches Neville on the top rope. So that results in a DQ, which is fine. Neither guy has to do a job. The only thing I didn't like about this, in the afterbirth where Rusev put Neville in the Accolade, I would not have had Neville tap out. I don't like seeing babyfaces submit on general principle, especially when you're talking about top guys. Neville's the NXT champion. He shouldn't be tapping out to anybody, regardless of whether or not we're talking about a main roster talent. I also hated how nobody came out from the locker room to save Neville. Where were all the babyfaces? That's Wrestling Logic 101 when it comes to booking heat angles. You're supposed to have a handful of underneath guys trying to save the babyface in peril so that when the real stars show up, it gets a big pop. But nobody came out. So they basically left Neville flat on his back like a geek. Which I also didn't like. May as well just had Rusev piss in his mouth while he was down there. Yeah, I would have structured that whole post-match thing differently. I mean, you want to put Rusev over as a beast, fine. But there are ways to do that without directly killing your babyface champion. And I don't think they did Neville any favors here at the end. But it was a good match up until all that. It's always fun seeing Rusev and Lana pop up, even if it's only for a short stint. And at the same time, they've reintroduced Tyler Breeze into the mix. So I'm sure we'll see him join forces with Neville, Zayn, and Kid in the main event picture. And we all know what it's building to for the next TakeOver special. So, fine. All in all, they kind of turned it around in the last 15 minutes. But you can pretty much skip everything up until the main event if you wanted. I continue to reaffirm that this program's a one-note machine. If anything's happening outside the NXT title picture, a lot of it's just placeholder. Stuff that really doesn't matter. The tag division's a joke. The girls are single-handedly killing the show week in. Now the fans are actively boycotting their matches by doing shit like the Wave. Who could blame them? The next TakeOver special isn't until September, so you got a lot of downtime between now and then. I mean, the Fatal 4-Way feud is the only thing really dominating any sign of interest. And I foresee that being a similar pattern up through the event. Because I'm looking at everything else they're doing right now. They're really not giving me much to hang my hat on. But we'll keep revisiting the program and see when things pick up. Slowly by surely. I think things get a lot better once Kevin Owens comes in. But I don't think that's till like December, right? So we got a long way to go. Just keep pushing, man. Just keep pushing. Day in and day out, I tell myself that. Wow. All right. Unprofessional stretch, but I had to do it because my neck is killing me right now. So let's talk about what's going on here before I close the show out. There will not be a Friday show for this week and the following week. I'm debating whether or not I want to do a Monday show next week. I think I'll have a little bit of time over the weekend to do so. And there aren't any pay-per-view specials coming up, so it would be a shorter show anyway. So I'll probably be able to do that. But the Classic Territory reviews are going to have to take a back seat for the next couple weeks. Sorry about that. My schedule's kind of piling up right now, and I just don't have a lot of time. So that's what we're going to plan on. And if you do see a Monday show next week, then, well, it confirms that I did one. But if you don't see one, then we will reconvene in, I guess we'll say 3 weeks. So we're putting a pause on it. Don't unsubscribe. Don't shut the show off and never come back. We're just doing a little brief hiatus while I get my life together here. And now maybe it'll be good for me. Gives me a chance to detox from the YouTube world and the Rumble world. But yeah, as always, thanks everybody for coming back to check out the show. And I'll stay in touch. And we'll be back soon. Take care. Peace out.